Welcome back, everyone. They say every city has a place people pretend not to know, not because it isn't there, but because it refuses to be forgotten. For Denver, Colorado, that place used to be Ravenwood Terrace, a tiny overlook park built halfway up a granite slope, meant for couples to watch the night skyline. The city closed it down in 2009 after a series of incidents the newspapers politely labeled as disturbances. Locals had a ruder word. They called it a mouth that spits things back. Our narrator, we'll call him Ethan, first went there at 2:17 a.m. on a January night in 2013, long after the fences went up and the city claimed the ground was unstable. He wasn't there for ghosts. He wasn't there for history. He was drunk, dragging his feet home from a birthday party he never wanted to be at. He wasn't alone. 3 friends walked with him through the frost-bitten dark. Cody, the loud one, Mason, the quiet one, Samira, who never believed anything unless she could touch it. They cut through the service road behind the shuttered cafeteria building, a shortcut most people avoided after dark. And that is where Cody laughed and said the one sentence Ethan still remembers with physical disgust. "Yo. Since we're here already, you guys want to see something insane?" From his coat, Cody pulled not alcohol, not a joint, not a prank, but an Ouija board older than any of them. The lacquer cracked like dry bone. Ethan cursed under his breath. He didn't believe in ghosts, but he respected the idea of not asking for what you don't want. Samira rolled her eyes. Mason looked like he wanted to leave. But Cody had that ugly kind of confidence people follow just to avoid the argument. They climbed the last concrete steps toward Ravenwood Terrace, steps sealed with rusted chain the city never bothered to remove. And when Ethan's boot touched the final stair, he noticed the temperature dropped. Not like normal January cold. Not like wind. Like something noticed their arrival. He told himself it was nothing. He was wrong, and he would spend the next decade wishing he had turned around before anyone sat down. Because what happened on that concrete platform, what rose and what did not fall back down, is the kind of thing that rewires a human being. Not into a believer, but into someone who stops asking the universe questions. Ethan says this is the only supernatural experience of his life. And after that night, he never needed a second one. They sat on the rough concrete, stained with moss and sand. Above them, Denver's streetlights glowed. But from where they were, that light looked like it belonged to another world, one that had nothing to do with this place. Cody set the Ouija board down like he'd rehearsed it. Samira crossed her arms, trying to look unimpressed. Mason licked his lips, not from the cold, from nerves. And Ethan didn't touch anything, didn't speak. He just watched, as if fear had a shape and he was looking straight at it. Cody pushed. 2 fingers on. If you don't believe, you should be the first to touch it, so you can be proven wrong. Ethan opened his mouth to refuse, but Samira scoffed, placed 2 fingers on the planchette. "Fine, let's get this over with." Mason followed, shaky. Cody put his hands down last. Only Ethan stayed out. Some part of him knew. If he touched it, he would lose the right to call all of this coincidence. Cody muttered the opening. "If someone is here, answer." Nothing. No wind, no vibration, no shift. Just silence. Thick, poured like cement over their mouths and thoughts. Cody tried again, sharper. "We give permission. Answer." That is when Ethan heard it. A metallic rattle at the chained staircase. Not wind, not an animal. Something with intent. Samira frowned toward the stairs. Mason swallowed. Cody, instead of being afraid, smiled like someone who had never been punished. He asked a third question, stabbing it into the dark. "Is there someone dead here?" The planchette moved, not jolting, not twitching. It glided, firm and controlled, as if another hand, unseen, had joined them. Samira flinched but didn't lift her hands. Mason cursed under his breath. Cody froze. Ethan shot to his feet, heart pounding hard enough he could hear it. The planchette stopped on a single word. Yes. Only then did they notice. Their breath was visible, white and ghosting in the air, even though it hadn't been cold moments earlier. Not natural cold. This was the cold that means something else is present. Ethan looked toward the stairwell, still dark, still empty. No figure, no movement. But inside that quiet, one thing was unmistakable. They weren't alone anymore. Cody drew a breath to ask the next question, and Ethan already knew. It was too late to stop.
Before Cody could form his next question, the board reacted first. The planchette, still under their fingers, slid again, faster this time, dragging Samira's hands with it. It landed on 3 letters, slow, deliberate, like someone spelling through clenched teeth. D-I-E. Samira jerked her hands away as if burned. Nope, I'm done. I'm not. She didn't finish, because at that exact second, the padlock on the stairwell chain clanged, once, like something below had yanked the chain hard. Mason stood up so fast he knocked over the lighter. The tiny flame went out. The darkness that swallowed them wasn't normal darkness. It felt sealed, as if the night closed its fist around them. Then came the footsteps. Slow, heavy, wet. Not echoing from far away, but from the bottom of that staircase, ascending. Cody whispered without intending to, "Someone's coming up here." But Ethan knew. No someone climbs stairs that slowly, unless they're carrying something, or unless they're not alive enough to feel weight. A second sound joined the footsteps. A raspy breathing, strained, the kind that belongs to a throat full of blood or dirt. Samira pressed a hand to her mouth. Mason backed away until he hit the brick wall. Cody tried to sound rational, but his voice cracked. "It's probably an animal." But animals don't climb stairs upright. Animals don't breathe like a wounded man dragging his lungs through time. Ethan forced himself to look. He couldn't see a body, only the rhythmic shift of shadow in the wall across from the stairs, as though something just tall enough was already halfway up. The board, still lying on the pavement, wasn't done either. With no hands touching it, it slid on its own, scraping the concrete with a dry wooden scream. And then, the breathing stopped. The footsteps stopped. The world locked into absolute stillness. Cody, trembling now, whispered, "Ask it something. Ask what it wants." Ethan didn't touch the planchette. He didn't speak, but he already knew what the answer would be. Whatever was here didn't want conversation. It wanted permission, and someone had already given it. The air shifted instantly. A chill crept along their spines, not from the wind or the night air, but from the feeling of being watched by something invisible. Samira screamed, but her voice was swallowed by the thick darkness. Mason, panicked, grabbed Samira's hand and turned toward the park exit. Cody froze, eyes wide, hands trembling, too afraid to leave the Ouija board behind. Ethan's heart pounded like a hammer. He knew that if they delayed even a second, this would no longer be a game. Then came the footsteps, now very close, almost unnervingly so, as if the darkness itself were moving, tracking every step. The rasping breath returned, close enough that they could smell the damp, metallic tang of blood. Samira grabbed the Ouija board, intending to throw it, but Cody held on. "Don't."
It's watching everything. We have to get out. Ethan made a decision, terrified as he was, and sprinted toward the park gate. Mason and Samira followed, but the darkness around them seemed to twist and bend, hindering every step. They ran over dry, crunchy leaves, each sound echoing like their own screams trapped in the void. Suddenly, the Ouija lifted from Samira's hands, spinning in the air, then vanished as if absorbed into nothingness. Their frantic breathing was replaced by deadly silence, leaving only heartbeats and rustling leaves underfoot. When they finally burst out of the park, the night was still. Streetlights flickered in the distance, a weak beacon, a faint hope. But Ethan knew the feeling of that darkness, the cold they had felt, would never leave their minds. We shouldn't play with that again," Samira gasped, eyes still fixed on the shadows they had just left. Mason nodded silently, saying nothing. Cody, trembling, stared at where the Ouija had disappeared, both afraid and mesmerized by something inexplicable. Ethan remained silent, knowing some boundaries are not meant to be crossed. A reminder, not everything you touch is just a game. Some things exist in the dark, watching, waiting for those who dare to provoke them. They made it to the car, scrambling inside, shutting the doors, gripping the wheel with the sensation of barely surviving, yet already feeling a loss. The park now was just an empty space in the night, but the memory of the rasping breath, the footsteps, and a cold not of this world would haunt them forever. They never spoke of that night again. No pact was made. They simply knew that some experiences dissolve the ability to joke, to retell, to analyze. Silence became their version of survival. They drifted apart as people do. Mason moved states. Samira married young and swore off anything paranormal. Cody stayed in Denver, though he never once set foot near the base of that mountain again. Ethan aged, but the memory never aged with him. It stayed sharp, unnaturally sharp, like something not remembered but installed inside him. Years later, long after the park had been bulldozed and replaced with a new housing development, Ethan returned. Not because he wanted to, but because some memories don't loosen their grip until you confront the ground they were born on. The place was different. New sidewalks, new fences, trimmed lawns, children's bikes. No trace of the darkness that once lived there. And yet, the moment he stepped onto that soil, the same wrong cold slid under his skin. No wind, no winter, just that familiar, intelligent cold. He stood still, listening. At first, nothing. Then from beneath the new concrete, deep, muffled, like a sound trapped in earth, came one single knock. Slow, purposeful, as if something buried was acknowledging him. Ethan didn't run, not this time. He only whispered, with a voice older than his age, "We never meant to open anything." Silence answered, but in that silence was not forgiveness, only recognition. He walked away after that, didn't look back, didn't tell anyone, because he finally understood the rule that night had been trying to teach them. Some things do not haunt locations. They haunt the permission you gave. And once permission is given, even once, you never fully take it back. There are places in this world that aren't just forgotten. Not the kind with peeling paint or broken roofs, but places that hold something that doesn't belong to this world. And if there's one lesson I've learned from it all, it's this. Not every door is meant to be open. Back then I was young, 18, maybe 19. I had just finished high school, had no idea what to do next. And to kill time, I often tagged along with my cousin Caleb. Caleb was the adventurous type, the kind who'd follow roads not marked on maps, or break into houses everyone else avoided. He used to say, "Abandoned houses are like books no one ever reads. Sometimes, inside them lies a story no one was meant to hear." I didn't share his optimism. To me, those houses were empty shells, left behind after the soul had departed, and sometimes that soul hadn't gone very far. One summer afternoon, Caleb invited me on another of his explorations. His old pickup truck turned down a dirt path so narrow that the branches scraped against the windows with sharp cracks. We drove deeper, past the reach of radio static, into a place where even the sunlight seemed to thicken. At the end of the road, the house stood waiting, silent, still, as if it had been expecting us. Empty window frames, a crooked roof, weathered wooden walls. But something about it made my heart slow down, like it was warning me. This wasn't just an old house. It was a trap. We climbed the rotting steps. The wood creaked under our feet, sounding like an old man sighing. When we pushed the door open, the air inside was heavy, damp, moldy, laced with the metallic scent of rust. In the kitchen, I saw it. A door. Not an entrance, not a closet, just a door, leaning against the wall, unhinged, unattached. It looked ancient, as if torn from somewhere else and abandoned here by mistake. Caleb reached out, curious, and the moment he touched it, something fell from behind. A journal. Its fabric cover was dark blue, damp and moldy, but when I picked it up, it felt warm, as if someone had just held it. I opened it. Scrawled handwriting, smeared ink, words written in panic. Greater than, Mina. Greater than, Father is waiting. Greater than, lost in the woods. George is gone. And on the last page, just one word. Greater than, goodbye. Greater than, written over and over so violently that it tore through the paper, leaving marks that looked like dried blood. I flipped back to the earlier pages to read again, but they were blank. Every single one. Only the last ripped page remained. Caleb stared at me, his face pale. "Did you see the writing disappear?" I nodded, and in that instant, the house changed. The air grew thicker, not just mold now, but something oppressive, as if a presence was breathing against the back of my neck. The nails in the walls began to tremble, squealing softly. Then I heard it, a whisper, not the wind, a woman's voice, hoarse, broken, repeating a melody like a twisted lullaby. We turned toward the front door, but it wasn't there. The strange door, the one from the kitchen, now stood in its place, blocking the exit. No dragging sound, no movement. It was simply there. Caleb whispered, "Don't look at it. Just go." We squeezed past, bolted outside, and didn't look back. The truck roared to life, gravel spraying behind us. Only after several miles did we finally breathe again. Then I looked down. My shoes were soaked. A dark, sticky trail ran from the toes to my ankles. It wasn't mud. The smell was metallic. Blood. That night I sealed the shoes in a plastic bag and threw them into the trash behind my house. I couldn't keep anything from that place, but the trouble didn't end there. From that night on, my sleep was never peaceful again. I dreamed of a long hallway, endless. At the far end stood that same door, unattached, waiting. Each time I got closer, I'd hear knocking from the other side. 3 knocks. Steady, clear, deliberate. Once, I woke up drenched in sweat, and in the darkness of my room, I swear I saw the outline of a door standing in the corner. But when I turned on the light, nothing, just a blank wall. Years have passed since then. Caleb left town. I never heard from him again. But the memory, some doors are made to divide two worlds. And if you ever stumble upon a door that doesn't belong, remember this: it doesn't want to be opened. Still, I can't shake the question. If one night I wake to the sound of creaking hinges and find that same door standing before me, would I have the courage to reach for its heavy handle? And what, waiting on the other side, would I find? Welcome to The Blood Pact of Raven Hollow. October 1851, Raven Hollow, North Carolina. The air was cold enough to bite, and the last of the autumn leaves clung to the trees like dying embers. Sheriff Elias Turner, a man hardened by 2 decades of service, rode up the gravel path toward the Graves property just as the sun began to set behind the mountains. What he found was silence. Not the kind of silence that comes from peace, but the heavy, unnatural kind that presses against your chest, the kind that makes even the crickets go quiet. The front door of the Graves farmhouse stood slightly open. Inside, the place looked like a family had just vanished in the middle of dinner. Plates on the table, chairs pulled out, a kettle still hanging over cold ashes. Turner called out, "Nathaniel?" "Martha?" But his own voice sounded small, swallowed by the stillness. Then he saw it. On the floor, just below the stairs, a dark stain soaked deep into the wooden boards. He knelt, touched it with his fingertips, and froze. It was blood. Not much, but enough to tell him something terrible had happened here. Upstairs in the children's room, he found a small book lying beneath the bed, a diary belonging to Abigail Graves, the oldest daughter. Turner flipped to the last page. Her handwriting started neat, but the final lines were frantic, almost torn into the paper. "Father says the mountain is calling again. He doesn't sleep. He just stands by the window and listens. Mama cries when she thinks we can't hear. Last night I saw him in the yard, digging and whispering to someone I couldn't see. I think he's not our father anymore." Turner felt a chill crawl down his neck. He closed the diary, stood, and looked out the same window Abigail had mentioned. From there he could see the ridge, tall, jagged, dark against the crimson sky. And just for a second, he thought he saw something move along the tree line, a shape, watching. He blinked and it was gone. That night, the sheriff gathered a group of local men, hunters, trappers, farmers, and they followed the faint trail leading from the Graves property into the woods. They carried lanterns, rifles, and the uneasy silence of men who knew they might not all come back. After nearly 3 hours of climbing through the dark, they reached a clearing. In the center stood a circle of stones, blackened, scorched, and among the ashes were bones, small bones. Turner's lantern trembled in his hand. "Good God," he whispered. But the worst part wasn't what they found. It was what was carved into the largest stone at the circle's center. 9 for the mountain. The pact is renewed. That was when they realized this wasn't just a murder. It was a ritual. And Nathaniel Graves hadn't just gone mad. He had fulfilled something far older than himself. The next morning, as the men returned to town, the fog rolled down from the peaks, thick, heavy, and silent. And in that silence, one of them swore he heard children laughing, faint and distant, coming from deep within the mountain. They never found the Graves family, not their bodies, not their souls, only the mark they left behind. And if you ask the old folks in Raven Hollow today, they'll tell you, when the mist settles low and the moon turns red, you can still hear Nathaniel whispering from the woods. The mountain always takes what it's owed. October 2024, Raven Hollow, North Carolina. 4 people, a small documentary crew from New York, drove their old SUV deep into the Appalachian wilderness.
Leading them was Ethan Ward, the director and host of a YouTube channel called American Hauntings, known for digging into unsolved mysteries and forgotten legends. Along with him were Clara Nguyen, the cinematographer, Derek Holt, sound engineer, and Lena Brooks, a historian who had spent months researching the mysterious Graves family disappearance of 1851. Their mission was simple: film a Halloween special titled The Pact of Raven Hollow. Ethan stepped out of the car, breathing in the cold, heavy air that smelled of damp wood and rust. The town felt frozen in time. Old storefronts, flickering neon signs, and a few locals watching them from their porches with unreadable eyes. "Feels like we just drove straight into the past," Lena murmured, clutching her notebook tighter. Ethan grinned. "Perfect for Halloween, right?" What none of them knew was that this would be their last project. That night they checked into a roadside inn called the Hollow Inn. The owner, an elderly woman named Mrs. Dalton, looked uneasy when she heard the name Graves. "You kids shouldn't be here," she said softly. "The mountain folks don't like being disturbed." Ethan chuckled, thinking it was just another piece of local folklore. But when Mrs. Dalton set the keys on the counter, her hands were shaking. "Ma'am, when you say mountain folks, what do you mean?" Lena asked. Mrs. Dalton hesitated, then whispered, "They never left. They're just waiting." The next morning, the crew hiked into the woods. Lena led the way, following a copy of an 1851 sheriff's map that marked where the stone circle had once been found. After hours of trekking through thick pine and rocky hills, they reached a clearing covered in moss and ancient stones. "This is it," Lena said, "where Sheriff Turner found the ritual site." Clara set up the tripod. Ethan began narrating. "October 12th, 2024. We're deep in the Raven Hollow Mountains, standing where one of the South's most disturbing disappearances took place. Wind howled through the trees, and the microphone picked up a faint, high-pitched sound, like children laughing. "Did you hear that?" Clara whispered. "It sounded like a kid." Ethan replayed the audio through his headset. Nothing, just wind. He smiled uneasily. "Probably just an echo. Let's keep rolling." They stayed until dusk, setting up camp near the circle of stones. The forest grew darker, the air colder. When the moon rose thin and sharp, its light seemed to bend, drawn toward the stones like water down a drain. Derek froze mid-sentence. "Do you guys smell that? Like burning meat?" No one answered. Then, a faint crackle echoed through the woods, a flicker of orange light, then red. Clara turned the camera. In the distance, a figure stood motionless inside the glow. "Hello?" Ethan called out. "We're filmmakers. We don't mean any harm." No response. The red light pulsed brighter. Then, click. Every device went dead. Cameras, flashlights, recorders, all of it. In the suffocating darkness, Lena heard footsteps. Slow, heavy, deliberate. Then a voice, deep and rough from somewhere among the trees. "The mountain always takes back what's hers." The recording ends there. That was the last footage recovered from Ethan Ward's camera. 3 days later, their SUV was found abandoned on the side of the road. No blood, no struggle, no bodies. Just a half-burned notebook on the back seat. On the final page, scrawled in shaky handwriting, were the words, "We found the circle. But the circle found us too." Their story became Raven Hollow's second legend, another chapter in a curse that refuses to die. The pact lives on. FBI. Case file number 1194. Missing persons, Raven Hollow incident. Filed October 21st, 2024. Agent in charge, Special Agent Marcus Hale. The moment Agent Marcus Hale arrived in Raven Hollow, he knew something wasn't right. The air was heavy, not just with mist and pine, but with the kind of silence that remembers. He'd been with the Bureau for 17 years, had seen his share of strange disappearances, cults, serial offenders, wilderness tragedies, but nothing like this. The local sheriff handed him the evidence bag. Inside, a half-burned notebook with the initials E.W. Ethan Ward's journal. "That's all we found in the car," the sheriff muttered. "No blood, no signs of a struggle, just that, and the smell of ash." Marcus flipped through the charred pages, notes, coordinates, rough sketches of stone circles, and then, on the last page, in frantic handwriting, we heard them singing again, the children in the dark. The next morning, Hale visited the site himself. The trail was rough, overgrown, wet, nearly invisible. His boots sank into layers of pine needles that muffled every step. When he reached the plateau, his breath caught. The circle of stones was real. 9 stones, each precisely placed. The ground inside scorched black. And in the center, a small camera tripod, melted halfway into the dirt. "Ward's gear," the sheriff said behind him. "Guess he didn't get to pack up." But Marcus wasn't listening. He was staring at something else, something carved into the inner face of one of the stones. "The Covenant remains." The letters were new, the cuts still sharp, the stone dust fresh. Someone had been here recently. Later that night, while cataloging evidence at the Raven Hollow Sheriff's Office, Hale received a call. A local farmer, Jed Crowley, had found something near the old Graves property 5 miles north of town. When Hale arrived, the farmhouse was little more than a skeleton. Roof collapsed, walls blackened by decades of decay. Crowley handed him a sealed plastic bag. Inside was a leather-bound journal, half buried in the cellar. On the cover, Abigail Graves, 1851. Back at the inn, Marcus sat alone at his desk, flipping through the brittle pages. Most of it was written in neat, old-fashioned cursive. Dates, scripture quotes, weather notes. But halfway through, the handwriting changed. The ink grew darker, the words desperate. "The whispers came again last night. They call from the hollow beneath the stones. They say we must feed the Covenant, or it will come for us all." He felt a chill crawl up his spine. Then he turned to the final page, where the ink was fresh, the strokes too clean to be from 1851. Written in modern penmanship were 5 words: "Welcome back, Marcus. We waited." The lights flickered. A wind rose outside, though the night had been perfectly still. And from somewhere beyond the thin motel walls came a faint sound, a child's laughter, drifting through the static of the police radio. Marcus froze. He turned slowly toward the window. Through the reflection in the glass, he saw the outline of a figure, tall, unmoving, standing just beyond the parking lot lights. Then, click. The power went out. When the backup generator kicked in minutes later, Marcus was gone. The room was empty, except for his open briefcase and the journal. A new entry had appeared inside, written in the same dark ink. He joined the circle. 9 becomes 10. They say Raven Hollow's curse is older than the town itself, that every few decades, when the moon bleeds over the mountains, the Covenant chooses again. And this time, It chose one of us. 3 months after Agent Marcus Hale vanished, the Raven Hollow case was officially closed. No evidence, no bodies, no answers. Only rumors, spreading through the Appalachian hills like winter fog. Locals say that on nights when the moon bleeds red, you can still hear footsteps echoing across the plateau. Steady, heavy, as if someone's still out there, standing guard. A few thrill seekers went looking. None of them came back with answers. Only their recording equipment was found, scattered in the woods. Batteries dead, but one audio clip survived. Then a deep male voice whispers, 9 are complete. 10 is awakening. Raven Hollow is nearly abandoned now. Cabins rotting under moss, windows black as hollow eyes. Only a crooked road sign remains, paint peeling, letters barely visible. Welcome to Raven Hollow, where peace finds you. But folks swear that if you drive through after midnight, your headlights might catch a figure standing by the roadside. A man in a worn FBI jacket, holding a half-burned notebook. And if you stop, he'll look right at you, smile faintly, and whisper, "You hear them too, don't you?" The music fades, leaving only wind and a slow, rhythmic thump like a heartbeat. The story you've just heard doesn't really end. Somewhere deep in the Appalachian Mountains, someone's still writing the final chapter of the pact.